Namaste and welcome to another interesting session. Today, as our honorable guests, we have an illustrious couple, Shri Jayakumar and Srimati Varsha Kumar. They are an inspiring couple who have committed their lives to exploring, preserving, and presenting our glorious Indian culture and heritage, especially that of South India and Tamil Nadu, in a lovely platter for the future generations. Thank you so much for giving us your time and hosting us in this lovely space of yours. A small introduction about them for our viewers. Sri Jayakumar is a trained classical musician. He's a performing artist. He's a historian. He's a researcher. He's an educator. And he has trained himself in Carnatic music from the prestigious Kalakshetra Foundation. He has 2 postgraduate degrees, one in history and heritage management, and another in Tamil language and literature. He holds a diploma in sound engineering from Australia. He holds a diploma in Saiva Siddhanta, and he has been blessed to be under the tutelage of Padma Bhushan Dr. Nagaswamy and Professor Sri Ramachandran in epigraphy. And his expertise in these fields have led him to be the resource person in several music and dance productions and films that have narrated tales from our glorious past, a few of them being Sri Maniratnam's Ponniyin Selvan and Srimati Bombay Jayashree's Tyagaraja. And Mrs. Varsha Kumar, with her creativity, innovation, and an eye for aesthetics, along with their mutual love, respect, and devotion to our tradition and heritage, have carved themselves a niche in this very unique field, which is today referred to as cultural and heritage entrepreneurship. They run a company called Courtyard Tours, which conducts heritage walks and tours. They run an NGO called Prastara, which has committed itself to preserve Indian heritage and culture and supports a lot of artists, artisans, and scholars who contribute to the same. And I am personally a witness to the enormous work that this organization does. And now their new venture is this lovely space called House of Tuhil, which they have begun to explore into the history of handloom. Thank you so much, and we would like to hear from them about their lovely journey. So as my first question, I would consciously want to refrain from asking the cliche one that is probably asked in every stage and in every interview: why history, how history, history is so boring and all of that, because I want to stop myself from re-establishing the myth that history is boring, because I'm sure the 3 of us here will agree that history is very, very interesting. Right. It has to be approached in the right manner. So I would rather ask you, which is probably that one defining moment or that one spark which made you decide that you want your life to revolve around this?
First of all, thank you for having us. And to answer your question, I think one answer would be the novel Ponniyin Selvan.
Wow.
During my school days, on a summer holiday, 9th standard summer holiday to be exact, my father gave me the bound copy of Ponniyin Selvan, which he had collected from every week when it was republished as a weekly in Kalki magazine. I started reading that novel, and that the protagonist, Vandiyathevan, who travels from Kanchipuram to Tanjavur as a messenger of his master, Aditya Karikalan, I think that moment actually really captured me, that this is really fascinating. Then my father told me this is actually part true and partly history, partly fictional. I think that fascination continued. I continued to read Kalki's other work, Sivakami and Sabadam, all that. Then after finishing my school, I came to Kalakshetra in the year 2001 as a student of music. During that time, I met Anandi Krishnamurthy, Kalki's daughter, who was teaching Tamil to the non-Tamil students in Kalakshetra. I had my interactions with her, and then the interest grew. And once I finished my graduation in Kalakshetra, I was pursuing my sound engineering as a part-timer in a School of Audio Engineering from Australia, which was, they had a campus in Chennai. And I was also working in Kalakshetra in charge of research, documentation and archiving. And also I was teaching. I think my first assignment was to collect details about Sri M.D. Ramanathan, one of the greatest Carnatic musicians. And along with that, I started reading about Kalakshetra, the history of Theosophical Society and Rukmini Devi Arundel and the George Arundel, and her fascination towards Bharatanatyam, and then how she started the institution, all that. I think that really sparked my interest in history of Kalakshetra, as well as along with that, I read about her interest in our culture, and then the way she writes about how she got inspired from the Chola and Pallava sculptures for her jewelry design and costume design. That really fascinated me. I reread Ponniyin Selvan again when I was there, and Sivagami and Sabbatham again, and we had programs for students to go to the temples along with Dr. Chitra Madhavan and others. I think those journeys really inspired me to dwell more. I remember I signed up for an epigraphy course that was conducted by Professor S. Ramachandran. By then, social media started coming up. If Orkut was a thing then in 2006-7, they had a fan page for Ponniyin Selvan. We started discussing about the novel and who killed Aditya Karikala and all that. And then I started posting some historical facts from K. Nilakanta Shastri and others. And the people who were interacting, they said, why don't we travel to these places that is mentioned in the book? So our first journey was known as Vandiyathevan Yatirai. We traveled from Kanchipuram to all the way till Tanjavur, and we went to Pazhayarai and Kodiyakkarai. During that journey, what I thought was just, history is more fascinating than the fiction written by Kalki and others. So I came back and I started delving deeper into history. I enrolled myself for Masters in History, and then I expanded my knowledge in terms of history, epigraphy, and along with that, temple architecture. I started reading George Michel's work, Dr. Nagaswami's work on South Indian temple architecture, and I started exploring more on iconography as well. One fascinating work of Ganapati Sthapati, one of the greatest sculptors of our times, and then his work, Sirpa Chennul, was an eye-opener. I still refer to that on a daily basis. I think it was exactly in the year 2006 and 7, I think I really got deeper into history, but starting point was obviously Kalki's Ponniyin Selvan to begin with.
Wow, that's inspiring. Probably most of the young audience that are listening to us would want to take that up also. And since you said your journey started off with Kalakshetra, and since both of you have a background in music, dance, and fine arts, I would want to know how much your expertise in music and dance, and how much your command over Tamil and Sanskrit as a language has contributed to this learning.
I think Tamil and Sanskrit are like the two most important languages in our civilization. The background that I had in music and reading, along with the learning of music, comes with your theoretical aspect of it. You have to learn about the ancient scripts that were treatises that were written on music and dance and art. I think each and every student of art should explore, and that their learning should be as wide as possible, because learning Indian languages are important. That's why in Kalakshetra they insisted every student should learn Sanskrit, and also non-Tamil speaking students should learn Tamil. So the compositions are in Tamil and Sanskrit, and Telugu also was mandatory. I think that sort of expanded and my learning of history and culture. And temple architecture as a subject, which was taught by Dr. Chitra Madhavan, Tamil scholar Professor Raghuraman, he was teaching texts on music and dance, especially Silappadigaram. You have Aichiyar Kuravi, which speaks about the musical tradition of our Tamil culture in a very great manner and very detailed manner, to be precise. And those things were really fascinating as a student of history, not in a technical to start with. The technical aspects of those work will inspire, but historical aspect of it really fascinated me. What are all the texts that were written on music and dance in Tamil as well as in Sanskrit? I think Tamil and Sanskrit are like the two eyes of our country. Every student of art, music, dance, Indology, architecture or archaeology should learn Tamil and Sanskrit. I think that is very important to understand our culture, our practices, our art forms better. I think that really helped me to delve even more deeper into these subjects.
Beautiful. I think this will urge a lot of people to learn at least one art form and one ancient language, because it's always nicer reading it from the script in which it was recorded originally than reading interpretations.
Absolutely,
So,
absolutely. Your translation is like your pair of glasses that you.
absolutely.
That's out.
Yeah, thank you for that. Okay, so all of this makes sense, right? So this question is probably to Mrs. Varsha, because all of this makes sense to me logically, looking at our temples, looking at the literature we have, getting an interest in it. But the sari enthusiast in me wants to ask you, how did you feel, how did you even think of exploring into the history behind these designs and patterns that we see? Because when you walk into a shop, all we look for is a color that I don't have in my wardrobe, is how it's a different contrast, different pattern and all of that. How did you want to know about the tales that went behind these folds of fabric?
I think when we decided to start Tuhil, we started Tuhil when we decided to get married.
Wow, okay.
The entire venture was born when we had to go for our wedding shopping, and I wanted certain designs and colors that my grandmother had, and I was looking for that. Unfortunately, I couldn't get it, and we probably went to many stores, and when it was not available in the way that in what I was looking for, I said, maybe there is a huge opportunity here that there's a huge opportunity for us, and that's how this whole idea of handloom, traditional handloom, and delving into the past, looking at history, actually the idea came into existence. To be honest, if it had not been for my own grandmother's sari and my insistence on wanting to get something like that, I don't think Tuhil would have happened. So that's the story behind how Tuhil started in 2019. This is, and over a period of time when we started discussing, history was always a part of it, because with Jayakumar's interests and I think the kind of domain expertise and the kind of strengths that we bring to the table, we pretty much are on the opposite ends of the spectrum. I am an engineer by education qualification, and I come from a family of engineers, and I went on to pursue a management degree because I wanted to get into the arts and culture management space, which is what I had been doing for many years at that point in time. So he came up with the research, with the history, with the storytelling part of it. I brought in my own things of management and structure and production and quality. So it just became, at that instant, it kind of became a division of roles that we took on. Even before we formally formed an organization. From 2019, when we started, we were very clear that we wanted to do only handloom, that we were not going to go into power looms and mechanization, simply because I think in my own family, when I've seen so many saris of my grandmother, my mother, my great-grandmother, my great-grand-aunt, all of them, I have always associated each sari with a certain memory. I grew up outside India, and we used to come only on vacations here. So all those memories you keep even today. I still remember the first pattu pavada my party bought and sent from here to Muscat when we were living there. I still remember the color of my great-grandmother's sari when I visited her when I was in second standard in the village. I still associate those memories with her kalkand bath and the pal pongal that she used to make. So all of this, for me, it was a very personal relationship with respect to handloom, and bringing that kind of an equation into what we were doing. And of course, we were looking at how do we go about, given the ecosystem that neither of us have any background in either in textiles, or we were first generation entrepreneurs in our family. So I mean, it was a lot of passion, a lot of research, a lot of talking with many master weavers on what would be the starting point. Also a lot of discussion on what would be the pillars of or drivers of what we are doing. what is it that we want to achieve, not today, but I think our vision and our goal has always been to look at 20 years from today, what is it that we are going to do for the next generation. And this sort of formalized in 2022 when we actually got out our first set of weaves that came out. And a huge mentor of ours, Ms. Shanta Guhan, she has been inspiration, she has been our guiding light, and she has been the one who kind of pushed us and said, no, you both of you can actually do it. She was the one who allowed us to document a lot of her saris because she's a connoisseur. Everybody who is in the textile design architecture space know of her. They come and ask her for advice, and she has been the guiding light
Beautiful.
for us. So a lot of the weaves that we did, for example, a revival weave, Kura Nadu, was all because of her showing us the path. And 2022 was when House of Tuhil was officially born.
Nice. From our conversations before, I've heard you tell that most of these common motifs that we find in saris we look for, like say the manga design, the Gopuram, the Rudraksham, the Mail Kan and all of that, that they have a historic background to it. I'm pretty sure that in the time that we have, you can't talk about it in detail. Can you tell us the historic perspective or roots of a few of these popular designs that is in common usage?
So the Indian artisan community, I think today we see different communities which practice, be it sculpting or metal work or wooden work or stone work or even weaving and hand painting, handicrafts. I think today they are all completely sort of distant from each other. Once upon a time, it wasn't the case. For example, let us say we take up a sculpture of Lord Nataraja. For the sculptor to create that image, a poetry is an inspiration, be it a Devaram by Appar or Samandar and Sundarar. Kunitta Puruvumum, Kovvai Chevvayar, Kumin Siripum. Unless you know the verse, you won't be able to bring that beauty into your sculpture. So the poetic tradition has inspired these artists to create their masterpiece. Similar to that, when it comes to handlooms, the practices that were, if you want to start with the Tamil culture, Manimekalai and Silapadikaram, which is around 3rd century or 4th century. There are many debates about the time period these wonderful literary works were written. But right from the Sangam period, we have references of handloom and hand weaving. In northern tradition, let us say from Rigvedic period, the loom was known as Tantra. I mean, Tantra meant loom in the Vedic language. And you have a history of handloom tradition, not just here in India, across many ancient civilizations. If you go to Egypt and you see the kind of work they have done thousands of years ago, it's mind-blowing. So the artisan community were not limited by geographical and political boundaries to start with. And the motifs and colors and patterns and designs that we see today in our South Indian handloom weaving, because we want Tuhil to be focusing more on South India, because be it anywhere, I think the South India is not represented very strongly. We should also start showcasing our wonderful traditions and colors and cultures and motifs. Here, temple architecture have played a very significant role in inspiring the weavers, vice versa also.
Okay.
And in temples, you are limited by a material, let us say stone, and even in the rocks, you have different types of rocks. In fabrics, largely cotton and largely silk were the material. Before that, they have used animal skin and all that. You have references for that as well. An artisan creates a particular motive, and when it comes to Indian symbolism, prosperity has been a very, very important focal point.
Yes.
For example, lotus symbolizes prosperity. Parrots and peacocks. The parrot symbolizes knowledge as well as prosperity. And then you have the Rudraksha, which is considered to be Shiva's sacred eye. That was adopted into, you don't find a lot of sculptures or motifs, carvings in temples depicting Rudraksha. On fabric you have. So those are the things. Anything that you look into Indian motifs, there is the symbolic representation. Also, there is a philosophical representation. For example, since we are talking about parrots, parrots are usually seen in fabric as well as in temple architecture. From your ancient times, you have representation of this parrot as a symbol of knowledge, be it Sukha Maharishi. From there onwards, you have till about recent times, you have Bhaskar Raya.
Yes.
When it comes to Lalita Sahasranama, we have this famous tale of goddess being seated on his shoulder and reciting the Mahachatushashti Koti Yogini Ganasevitaye. Apparently, she recited all the 64 crore yoginis. So, these motifs and symbols have been, for example, Gopuram. Gopuram literally means an entry gateway. That grew, if you read the history of architecture, how Gopurams in temples evolved, it itself is a fascinating story. In ancient times, it was a very, very simple entry doorway. Even if you go to Kanchipuram, the Kailashanatha temple, 8th century temple, which has a very, very simple Gopuram. It is not a taller one as we see in the later times. So it starts there. And these Gopuram motifs were from 11th, 12th century onwards, it started getting into fabric, especially in the sari. In Tamil, sari is known as Pudavai. You have Kulothunga Chola the first. From his time onwards, we have written epigraphical references, word being used, Pudavai. Pudavai, the word being used in inscriptions from Kulothunga's time. So, before that, of course, Tuhil was the word Tuhil means fabric, which was mentioned in ancient Tamil literature as well. So, when it comes to coming back to the motives, anything that meant sacred, meant auspicious, and symbolizing prosperity was woven into the fabric, because a fabric has to bring happiness. The main purpose of it is draping it and wearing it, that's there. But along with it comes the idea of motive, not just natural beauty, as well as something beyond that. So beautification is one thing. And for example, the kurta behind you has a particular motive. It's called the Kodi Karukku in temple architectural motive. Our master, tailor has taken that motive. They have drawn that and then brought it into a kurta. The Kodi Karukku and Vattapalai Karukku, Mayyapalai Karukku, these are all the terms that are used in temple architecture to bring these patterns. If you see them in many temples, in almost every ancient temple will have this Karukku motive, which represent again prosperity. Because these Karukku means Kodi Karukku is creeper. Unless there is water, it will not grow. Water brings prosperity. That's why the symbol of lotus also. And peacock, beauty, knowledge, prosperity. I think the idea of Indian fabric, especially the South Indian textiles and fabric motifs, are based on our mythology as well as symbolism that very heavily that comes with it. That's why I think these motifs are important to us. We wanted to retain those also. We also want to give these stories. And Yalis, for example, the mythical creature that you find almost in every temple as a motive is being brought into our fabrics. We weave them in the saris. Sari is the only place where we can play with the motifs and designs.
Absolutely.
If you are weaving a dhoti, then you are restricted with your Mahilkan and Kuilkan, your Rudraksha and the Gopuram motif. I think every fabric will have to have its own story. So our brand is Sari with a story. That's how we wanted to go about.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I understand from what you have been telling regarding the artisans and the weavers then. So they had knowledge of our art, our architecture, the sculptors, and
knew music and dance. The sculptor knew music
beautiful.
and dance, Shastras. He has to know anatomy. Otherwise, you can't create a physical body. You need to know about the instruments. You need to know about the literature. You need to know about the Puranas. The master sculptor have to be a master in everything.
which was the case with the weavers.
With the weavers also. You have fabrics. In fabrics, these artisans bring in Ramayana motifs. If you go to Kalamkari artists in Kalahasti, we had a massive panel in Kalakshetra during one of our craft mela where 108 episodes from Ramayana was brought. If you look at that panel, you'll be able to sort of decode Ramayana. I mean, you don't need. There were, of course, it is one of the greatest itihasas, but he was able to bring that in 108 scenes.
Beautiful.
So that has to be brought out. The most important emotions, the most important bhavas were brought into that. So similar to that, a weaver has to know what comes where.
So divinity had to be a part of their life, like how we say Sanatana Dharma is a way of life.
Absolutely.
It was there in their profession.
Absolutely.
Also.
Ours is very, 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 I think at times we take it for granted because it's in every day, it is a part of our life. I think sometimes we fail to notice them and appreciate them. That's where we want to make a difference and also want to educate people about handloom, the traditions and all that. So we believe in our philosophy. I think we want to stick with that so that we don't deviate ourselves from
Nice. So since you were saying, now we were speaking about weavers, right? So you said that you wanted to revive the ancient patterns and colors and how it was presented in olden times. So you must be interacting more with the traditional weavers and artisans as opposed to the more digital and urbanized ones right now, right? So in your interaction with them, are there instances when their skill, their respect for the craft, how they worship their craft has, left you really inspired and speechless?
So if you look at the ecosystem of the weavers and the artisan community, there is nothing called urbanized digital versus the traditional weavers. As a community, it is a traditional art form in the sense that it is an art form that has been practiced within the family in terms of generation. You had your father, your grandfather, they were all artisans, and then today the people who are weaving are part of that long tradition of uh, family craft. None of the clusters today, if you see, are in the urban cities. The clusters are where they had been established for many years ago. They still exist there. The reason why the clusters were there in the first place was more because of a geographical region in terms of access to water. And if you look back in time, when we started weaving, we had natural dyes. So you needed access to flora to be able to get those colors. You needed access to water for dyeing. And the entire process of weaving itself, it's not about the loom and then having the actual weave coming out. There are so many processes, or rather many steps that go into weaving a fabric. So all these steps that happen within those clusters, and it was a family affair, because you had nool suttardu, you had the entire dyeing process, you had the starching process, you had the warping process. Everything was done within the family, and many people were engaged in doing this particular art form. And that is how it was. Over a period of time, for various social, political, economic reasons, you have gradually had handloom decreasing. You've had the artisan communities, the number of skilled artisans have been dwindling. And it is no fault of theirs, given the fact that we are all driven by economics today, and it is about survival, and it's about the money. So they've all ventured into different other professions, and moved away from the traditional family craft that they've all been practicing. So this dwindling effect has had a huge repercussion in terms of skill set that exists today.
Okay.
So if you do see, there are different weaves. If you do see a very simple korvai technique that we have, which is the hallmark of a Kanjivaram sari or Kanjivaram weave, there are not many artisans today who can do a fantastic korvai, who will be able to do it very seamlessly. There aren't that many. And I think one of the things that we have been very particular about through our own venture is how do we take this skill set to the next generation, not just in terms of people who are going to continue the art form, continue the craft, but also in terms of people who are going to also wear. Because if they don't know what is handloom, if they don't know what it is that they're wearing, or they don't know the tradition of the craft, then they're not going to buy it.
Yes.
And if you're not going to buy it, people are not going to weave it. It's like kind of like a circular economy. And if people are not going to buy it, the art form will cease to exist at some point in time. And I think what has also happened over a period of time is, given the fact that economics has played a major role with power looms coming into existence, we have sort of seen that a lot of weaves have also gone out of existence. You find them only in books. It's very difficult to find artisans who would be able to do it. So it's almost like they have to learn a new craft, though they might have been engaged in the art form itself. So from so the time spent in the research, the time spent in actually trying to be authentic to the original weave, the weaving pattern, the weaving technique, all these takes time. So our idea is, at least the ones that we have today, let us keep them.
Keep it.
Yeah, and Jayakumar always keeps saying, unless and until we preserve something, we're never going to take it to the next generation.
Absolutely.
And he also keeps saying, one of the things is that we look at the past to learn from the past. If we go back to the numerous conversations that we have had with so many master weavers, so many weavers who sit on the loom, so many people who are involved, may not be directly involved in the weaving itself, but could be involved in the twisting of the yarn, could be involved in dyeing, could be involved in zari making. If you speak to a lot of them, each of them come with their own tale. But one particularly inspiring story I would want to share is that of our Courtyard artisan, our Courtyard weaver. This Amma, she's 74 years old today.
Oh, wow.
She still continues to weave. She has a pit loom in her house in one room, and she weaves our silk cotton Courtyard, the micro checks that we do. And her story has been a huge inspiration for us to continue doing what we are doing. And we were just 2 years old, but sometimes there are moments like this which give you that extra push to go, to go beyond what you set out to do. And this Amma, she started weaving very young, I think about the age of 13 or 14. She was married at the age of 12, and unfortunately within 3 months she became a widow. And some very beautiful things that she shared was, it was weaving, the skill that she had in her hand that allowed her to be who she is. Today we talk about terms like empowerment, we speak about terms like financial independence, and this artisan was a living embodiment of all these terms, because she started earning simply because of weaving. And she put it in a way saying that I had the skills in my hand, I didn't have to do anything else. She
Amazing.
still continues to weave because she says, as long as I am alive, as long as there is breath in my body, I will continue weaving. She has bought a house, she has adopted her sister's son, and she continues to live and she continues to weave.
Beautiful.
And this particular exchange, we met her a couple of few months ago, and I think this exchange was so matter of fact. Today we've chosen to take a lot of these terms, if we have such serious discussions about all of this. And here there is one person in a village and who's continued to doing her bit, doing the craft that's what she does, that's what she knows to do also, and very matter of factly telling me all of this without having any terms, without having any jargons. So I think this particular story will always be an inspiration for us, because to see her in action at this age, and such precision in her work, and such discipline and such commitment, and when she's sitting on that loom, that's all is her focus. She has no idea what's happening around her. That singular discipline, that singular focus at the age of 74. It's been hugely inspirational.
This reminds me of an incident from the life of Swami Vivekananda, when there was one man who walked up to him and said, I want to do something to help women, to empower them. And I said, if you want to do something to help them, don't do anything. Just let them be their powerful
Very true.
as
Yeah,
they are.
yeah, yeah. Very true.
So that was a beautiful story. And we fail to realize that, all these prints that we wear and we drape ourselves with, there is so much of work, so much of sacrifice, so much of time and commitment that goes behind it. And truly, there's no face to this, right? They are like behind the scene, and we need to be really thankful.
To add to what she said, I mean, when you are buying a handloom, you are not buying a cloth or a dress for yourself. You are buying a piece of art. I
Yes.
think that artistry is what you are trying to contribute to, very humbly. Rather, I don't use the word very patronizing or something like that. We don't want to use the word, because everybody becomes that, we need to support the weavers and all that. If you want your culture to thrive, your civilization to thrive, these are the people that you you should be patronizing, use the word, you should be supporting. I think when you buy a handloom, it's a piece of art. It comes with so much of hard work, and we want to add value to their thing, so that we can always go around and say we are proud to be Indian, we are oldest, we are the one of the oldest civilizations. Because unless these things survive, I don't think we can have any claim. And also, this is a civilization that's been continuously living. This is one of the very few ancient civilizations to have that continuity in the thread. I mean,
Very true.
that is very essential. I think in order to preserve that, because today the handloom weavers and artisans are made to some sort of a labor. You just commission them, they make this. No, it is beyond, more than that. We also want to train the next generation of weavers. We want to tell them that you have to take up, because powerloom has taken over. We need that also, they say, but I think handloom can be supported even more in all fronts.
Absolutely.
I think many people are trying to do their best, where we are also trying our bit. The truth is the one thing that you should be very proud to be wearing up your sleeves. I think that is very essential.
Okay, so now that we spoke about the weavers, another point that I would like to know about is when we see in most of these craft stores and textile shops, it's the North Indian weaves that are pretty popular now, the ones from North India,
Yeah.
your ajraks and your
Yeah,
bandanis
yeah,
and all of
yeah.
that, right? So, and from a very global perspective, if it's South India, it's Kanchipuram Pattu. That's what everybody knows
Yeah.
it as. Do you want to tell us about some of the weaves that are very native to Tamil Nadu, which is not in popular usage because we failed to put it up on the stands?
I think, like you mentioned, yes. If I think the global representation of our textiles has certain weaves that are popular, and when it comes to the south, it is very underrepresented. I think most weaves from the south are. Even for a Kanjivaram Pattu, I think from a global standpoint, I'm not very sure that there is a lot of representation.
Okay.
But having said that, I think there are multiple weaves in Tamil Nadu and across South India that are there, and some that are almost on the verge of not making it. If you, for example, if you look at one of the revival weaves, which is the Courtyard, its origin is from the town Mailadurai.
Okay.
And originally it was made in cotton, and then once silk was introduced, you had silk cottons. And this particular weave that you see, it is called it is the weave of a Tamil bride. So every Tamil bride wore Kuranadu Podave. So that's how you have today the term
Kurai Podave. Yeah.
Exactly.
In Mayavaram, the part of a town is called Kurainadu. Even today, that settlement is still there.
Okay.
And you had different checks. The highlight of this particular weave was the checks in different sizes. You had minuscule, you had different sizes that came over a period of time. Originally, it was in cotton. It was slightly coarse cotton. And when silk got introduced, the way it was woven was very difficult, as opposed to a regular silk cotton sari where you have either the warp is silk and the weft is cotton, or the weft is silk and the warp is cotton. In the warp and the weft, you had both silk and cotton. So
in 2:1 ratio, which is a very, very tough weave to create. So there are very, very few artisans who make this.
Okay.
We are trying to keep that alive,
This is the case with all the Kurai Pudavis.
Yeah.
This used to be. So
It used to be,
and then it got translated into you have silk Kurai Pudavai now. But from a historical perspective of where and how
and also you have Kanchipuram. You also have extraordinary Arani pattus. And then in Salem, you have the Ven pattu, the most pure white silk that they used to make. Dharmavaram pattu in South India and other parts as well. And
the Sungadi.
Sungadi Podave. And then you have the cotton of Negamam
Sungadi
cotton.
is native to Madurai?
Madurai. Saurashtra community, they still weave.
I think one of the beautiful things about our weaving traditions has been that a lot of dynasties, I mean, when you had the settlements coming in and moving, they all exchanged ideas. So you had the communities moving from different parts of India and settling in the particular villages, in the particular clusters, bringing their own knowledge system along with them, integrating it with the local geographical scenario where they migrated to. And that has, and you can see this beauty across all our weaves. So you will find the same motifs, what we call Vanasingaram here, you will find it in Banaras called Shikargar.
Okay.
You will find the Rudraksham and the Pauna and the Meenapet, you will find it in Orissa as well.
Okay.
You will find it in Andhra Pradesh as well. Though, like Jayakumar had mentioned, the symbolism across the country, the symbolism has remained same. But the incorporation of the original idea into the local context and adapting that into the local context is what had happened years ago. And also, if you see in terms of material, like Madurai Sungudi is a tie and dye material that came from the Bandhani, from the Saurashtra community there. Even today, if you look at a lot of if you look at a lot of the motifs, for example, they will call something called, it's called a Banaras motive itself. It's called a Bavanji Banaras motive itself, because it's taken from the Banaras weaving
technique
or the
and it's
weaving
been brought here.
pattern. for that.
But this cosmopolitan culture existed in Manimekalai. The Manimekalai time. We speaks. They say Yavana Tacharum Avanti Kollarum Maratha Kaiviningaram. So Yavana Tachan means the one who came from, probably Yavanas always meant Greeks or Rome. So people have been coming to this land for many centuries, and then we have been greatly inspired by the other traditions, and then we have taken so much, we have given so much. So it's been that way for a very long time. But over a period of time, what happens is each and every location, geographical location, found their identity. They did stick to it. They said this is what we should be doing. That's how you have if you go to Kongu region, for that a larger Kongu region, Coimbatore itself, you have different weaving technique for cottons, and then you have Pollachi Negamam cotton that comes in. From there onwards, you go to Kanjambatti. There is a particular village near Pollachi. So the Coimbatore region, they have different techniques also in weaving. It is too technical to explain, but each and every region or village or cluster have their own identity also. They have their uniqueness to present.
And because of how we existed many years ago, due to accessibility of road and non-globalization, every village had its cluster, because you had to clothe so many people, right?
Yes.
And
So
also
it-
the temples played a significant role, especially the Vaishnava temples that you have. And each during the Brahmotsavam, every day the Lord has to be decorated with a different color in terms of fabric and in terms of colors, in terms of designs and motifs. Perhaps Srirangam is the best example one could give. And then also you have Mannargudi Rajagopala Swami, be it Srivilliputturu. Then each day of the festival you have to present them. And the Puri Jagannath temple. Once upon a time, every day the offering, the Naivedyam they made, have to be, each day it has to be a different type of rice. So indirectly they were able to preserve 365 types of rice.
Oh wow. Okay.
This I heard from Vandana Shiva's lecture when she was talking about that kind of preservation that they had in terms of paddy and rice crops and all that. So which is fascinating, which can be applied to fabrics also. Each day you are offering something different to the deities. I think that really kept the tradition going for the very longest time. So I think we did our research in that aspect also. That's an ongoing exploration. So what the temples actually come up with, and then where were they being woven, all that. And also that's why the temple, once it becomes the epicenter of the society, and every community had a role to play. Be it a priest, be it a musician, and be it a dancer, and be it a weaver, be it a carpenter, a sculptor. Everybody had their role to play in the temple. So that sort of kept the traditions alive. That's why I think in medieval times, the temple becomes the center of a society, of a civilization, of a town or a village or a city. I think these systems enabled many artisans to survive.
It's
I think
mind-blowing how it was holistically planned to bring
Absolutely,
everyone
absolutely.
together.
You
Yeah,
also
true.
had the king's patronage, because they were so particular. So when you had kings patronizing, asking communities to come from one place to another, patronizing that particular weave. So you had that patronage which allowed for the artisan community to thrive. If you actually read The Song of the Loom by Vijaya Ramaswamy, a fantastic scholar and researcher, you will find that there are references to weavers talking about how they had a foot paddle made out of silver.
Oh, okay.
That was their status in society.
வெள்ளி மிதி மிதிக்க வெங்கலத்தால் நாடாவும் அப்படின்னு she says there is because these are weaver community, they had their own set of songs which keeps, they used to sing to their children. Now it's all completely gone because we have moved away from the art form, and along with that goes your oral history.
Yes.
Then it's a cultural anthropological study if you want to study these weaving communities. They had their own songs, and they one song that says the warp is Brahma, weft is Vishnu, that nada that goes between is Narada, apparently running from here there. So these are the songs that were sung by these people, and Vishnu, according to Purana, is known as Tantu Varda, one of his names. That means he took sun's rays and then he wove, apparently he did weave.
Okay.
So for him, so such references, and then these communities very fondly remember the stories and the songs. And one particular scholar, Dr. Vijaya Ramaswamy from JNU, she has done a meticulous work in documenting South Indian weaves and South Indian history of handloom traditions. I think for us that is one of the biggest inspiration apart from many other people. So Shanta Guhan is one, but scholars like Vijaya Ramaswamy is a great inspiration for us to read the historical aspect of it. And then we go and speak to the weavers the same language. They said, "Whoa, how do you know all these songs?" My grandmother used to say, my grandfather used to say, we don't have it anymore because unfortunately or fortunately ours is largely a oral tradition. Our history is sort of not written, rather we have written records, of course, but everything is oral. So documenting is something that we have failed to focus on, meticulously documenting. I think it's time we sort of buckle up and then start documenting in each and every aspect of our culture. And I think we should, if you want to preserve, that's the only way to. I think the Western scholars are the people who have come and done a lot of work more than us, because
More records there of our work.
yes, they have written meticulously. You may agree with them, you may disagree with them, but the record is being kept because of them. If you want to refer to temple architecture, George Michel and M.A. Dhaki, other group of scholars are the people, and then they have done meticulous work. And of course, Indian scholars have added value to it. I think that's the only way to keep this tradition alive, because study, research, and also you have to recreate, you have to do something about it.
Yeah, because in the same book, the songs, from there to the song that has changed in the last, I think about 40 years ago, to where the weavers say, why are we doing what we're doing?
So the story of these weavers can be decoded from these songs itself.
The song that you mentioned about Brahma, Vishnu and
Yeah.
Narada just reminded me of how our scripture says Sampat Narayana Spritihi. So when they were doing their work, they kept thinking of Bhagavan then.
Oh wow!
So that
Yeah,
was the reason for all the prosperity that
absolutely.
they
Yeah. Certainly, because for them it is very connected. It's a divine thing. It's a very divine thing for them. We have to. I mean, today everything is become very commoditized version of thing, which is okay in a way, but we shouldn't forget our.
Talk to them. They will tell you that there are days when they will not weave. If they are unwell, they will not weave.
Okay.
If they're
Someone
not
has died,
okay,
and if they are
yeah.
not mentally, I mean, in a sense, they are upset or something, they say that will reflect on our work.
okay.
So that is very important. We say about that also, performing artists and dancers and musicians.
Simple as
They have to.
cooking, we say, right? The
Yeah.
vibes
We
have
need
to
to.
be
The
good.
vibe have to be there. The
if-
weavers are very
yeah.
particular. They are very highly sentimental about it.
So
They said.
that those things which are part of our everyday life is part of their everyday life as well. But I think the commitment and the dedication and the discipline that you require to do that is unique, and it needs to be identified. It needs to be told. I don't know how many of the next generation, even our own generation, how many people would even understand the difference between, say, a handloom and power loom. How many of them would know what is the origin of what they are wearing? And I think largely especially when Jayakumar has spoken to a lot of students, if you ask them where your clothes are coming from, most of the time the answer is the shop. It's like saying, where does water come from? Bubble top.
One uncle comes and gives us water. These are things we want to tell these tales and tradition and history to the students also. That's our next plan, to take this to youngsters.
Okay, that
Yeah.
was exactly my concluding question to
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
So, if there was one takeaway, Gyan, that you would want to give to someone who works inside a sari shop, for them to look at these colors and patterns with a more profound perspective, what's that one thing you would want, one thought that you would want to leave them with?
One word to sort of we stick to often is subtlety.
Okay.
The colors, what represents our region, the designs and motifs, what represents our South Indian culture is what we want to stick to. And of course, today you have, thanks to globalization, you have many things coming in. I think that globalization should enable us to do more towards our
Yes.
landscape than sort of embracing everything. I run a culture travel company, and once our guests were eating, they wanted a South Indian thali, and then along with that came roti and paneer butter masala. One guest asked, in which way this is Tamil food? I mean, he wanted Tamil lunch. And he said, why is it getting mixed up in this? Which is okay, but as long as you know what your delicacies are. I think that is very important. Similar to that, we want to tell everybody who walk into our store, we want to say we do represent South India and very strongly in terms of colors, in terms of design, in terms of motives. And as I said, education and research is another aspect we want to focus on, because once this set of weavers are gone in the next 40, 50 years, there won't be... What happens next is a big question. We want to focus on that as well. In that way, we want to create, sustain, enable the next generation of weavers also.
I'm sure this conversation would have instilled pride in our younger generation, our future generations, to proudly drape themselves in a sari and not think it's something to do with old times. And thank you for that. It's always been a joy meeting you both, talking to you both.
Thank you, Janvi.
Look
Thank
forward to more such enriching
Thank you.
sessions.
Thank you so much for having us. Thank you.
Janvi.